gentlemen. So honored to have you here to celebrate our dear friend, Pete. He should be right back there dishing out wine and chocolate chip cookies, but we're going to have to make do, I guess. I'm going to kick it off with a little song, and then Dan will come up and take you from there. This is a song I wrote about, you know, it seems kind of melancholy, but really it's not. It's about making sure that every time you are with somebody that you fully appreciate being with them, because, you know, none of us are guaranteed that that's going to happen again, that we're going to have more time with our loved ones. And Pete was a master of making the most of every moment, it seemed to me. So anyway, a little song called "Is This the Last Time?" Is this the last time I see you until the great beyond? Whatever happens then, when we are dead and gone. Well, let's drink the nectar dry, so it won't be such a crime if we don't get one more. If this is the last time, is this the last time we make the music till the dawn lights the sky and ponder all the mighty questions till the bottle has run dry? If so, I'll let it be, but it's been so sublime, and we never really know if this is the last time. It takes a lifetime to know the gift of the day, each moment a jewel, and each smile that comes your way. Is this the last time we lay like spoons in the drawer, or tangle neath the covers for one more encore? I won't say I will not mourn, but we have known our prime. They say to leave wanting more, if this is the last time. And we never really know if this is the last time.
Thanks everybody for being here. Carol and I have had the privilege of hanging out with Pete's family for the last few days, and it's been delightful. So I want to introduce one of Pete's sisters. This is his sister Judy, and at the end of the service, please mingle with the family and tell them your stories of Pete. Okay?
Thank you, Dan. Well, good morning, and welcome to all of you to this celebration of the life of my brother, Pete Magee. As Dan just said, I'm Judy. I'm one of Pete's 4 sisters, And today, all four of us are here to celebrate with you our wonderful brother, Pete. My sister, Patty, my sister, Leslie, and my sister, Nancy. Well, you moved. Are all here with us. And we have several family members here as well. Patty's husband and my brother-in-law, David. And then two of Pete's nephews, Trouty Vaughn and Peter Vaughn, flew in late last night. And Hillary Vaughn Flanagan flew in yesterday, one of Pete's nieces. We have a large family, but as big families go, everybody goes in different directions, and unfortunately, many members of our family were not able to come today, but they are certainly here in spirit. There are a number of people here that I'd like to first recognize and try to offer the most sincere thank yous that we as a family can offer for all of the help and the support that we've received from them as we've gone through this last 2-month process of grieving and feeling the pain of losing a brother way, way too soon than what should have happened. First and foremost, and most importantly, and probably the most important person in Pete's life and his dearest and closest friend is Dan Russell. And Dan's beautiful wife, Carol, have both been, it's hard to find the words to really describe just how magnanimous they have been, how supportive. Well, they're like family. And now I can understand how Pete felt that they were like family to him. And we've really appreciated, Dan and Carol, everything that you've done for us. We're not finished yet. I think that we may make a few more trips out here to Alamosa as we try to tidy things up. But it's really been such a pleasure getting to know both of you. And the warmth and welcome that you have offered us and our family has just been beautiful. And Dan's family, his brothers, Scott and Steve, are here today, as is his sister, Sally, and his two children, Lindsay and Jason. So it's good to have you with us, and I know that you were important in Pete's life, and hopefully, I'm sure Pete was an important part of your lives, especially Lindsay, as you all work together with Pete. And then we have Pete's former wife, Jan Burke, and their son, Miles, flew all the way in here yesterday, or excuse me, I've lost track of the days, flew in on Thursday from England to be here with us to celebrate Pete's life. And we welcome you and we thank you for making the effort and coming across all the many miles that you've traveled. Miles is a wonderful young man, and we see a lot of Pete in him. So he was very young and very little when he went back to England, and so it's such a pleasure and such a treat to have you here with us for this occasion, sad as it is. Another person that I'd like to just acknowledge while we're here this morning is Brenda Femley. Brenda was also a very, very special and important person. Brenda was Peter's partner for many, many years. I had the occasion to meet her a long time ago. And then we picked up kind of where we left off 2 months ago after Pete's passing. And it felt like it was just yesterday that I had been in your company. And I just want to say thank you for being here today, and thank you for all of the good years that you and Pete shared together. I know it was meaningful for him. Brenda's family is here with us, and Brenda's family was really almost on par with Dan and Carol in terms of Pete feeling that they were really his family and a part of his family. Brenda's sister Jackie and her husband Mike, who Pete married. I don't know what year that was. I saw the picture. I know that happened. But more especially and most importantly, Brenda's father, Jack, and Brenda's mother, Phyllis, who were like a set of parents to Pete that I talked to him so many times on so many occasions, and he spoke so fondly and so lovingly, Jack, of you. I know that he respected you and was a better person for having had the opportunity to get to know you. And then we also have another young lady here, Lottie Keith, who just drove in this morning. And Lottie was also another very important person in Pete's life for many, many years. We are delighted that you are here with us, Lottie. Thank you for traveling the miles and the hours that you needed to this morning to get here to share with us for this celebration. I'd like to thank Don Richmond, who also I know was a very, everybody was a close friend of Pete's. I almost hesitate to say some were closer and others were not quite so, because as I've come to find out, Pete had a way of making everybody feel very special and a good special friend. And I know, Don, you two were very, very close. And we are absolutely thrilled to have the benefit of enjoying your music here this morning as we celebrate Pete's life. It too is very meaningful, so thank you. A person that there's no way you could possibly forget, and a very important person to this overall occasion that we're enjoying, and that's Ruthie Brown. Well, she's a mover and shaker, as I've been told, and there's no doubt about it. And Ruthie, thank you from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of the family for undertaking all of the logistics that had to occur in order to bring this occasion together in such a beautiful and lovely manner as it is this morning. Thank you very much. And thanks Society Hall and the other members that are associated with it for opening the doors and having us use this venue for this celebration this morning. So we're here to celebrate Pete and reflect on a very memorable life that he had. But I feel that as we do that, we also celebrate the Alamosa community and the wonderful friendships that Pete had here that developed over the 30-some years that he spent here, living a life that he loved and a community that he loved. Pete loved everyone here, and you know what we have come to realize? You all loved him right back. I am so grateful to have had the opportunity to really feel that love and really understand the fact that there was a bond here with Pete and with the Alamosa community. Knowing that has really made a remarkable effect on me, helping to ease the pain and the sorrow that I have felt in losing my brother Pete. Instead of feeling pain and sorrow and grief, I have peace in my heart because I know that Pete was loved and he was appreciated here by all of you in this Alamosa community. This was his home. This really was his home, and we get it. Even though we all came from the East Coast and we tend to think that Virginia was our home, there's no doubt about it. This was Pete's home. This was where he lived. I would have to say also, though, in acknowledging the love and the warmth and the life that Pete had here, I am a bit envious of all of you because you got the best of Pete. You got the last 30 years of his life, and I happen to believe those were the very best years of Pete's life. And for myself, and I think I can say on behalf of the family, we all feel that we never got enough of our brother. We never saw him enough, we never heard from him enough, and we regret that we never spent enough time with him. But at the end of the day, what's enough? You know, when you love someone and it's a sibling, there's never a cap to it. We would get together with Pete for someone's birthday. He would travel back to the East Coast. And oh my gosh, the couple of days that we would spend would go by so quickly. and we would say, oh, we have to do this again. But you know, everybody has, you have activities, you have things that go on in your life, and it gets difficult trying to kind of clear your calendar and make time to get together as a family. So I say to you in all sincerity, we never did have enough of Pete. And I will always feel that there were parts of him that I missed. But I'd also say to you that if I had to share my brother with anyone, I can't think of a finer community of friends and people than those of you sitting here in this room that I would share him with. And again, for that, I am very grateful. So looking back very briefly on some earlier days of our life, or our family's life with Pete, many of you may know we grew up in a Navy family. We were regarded as your typical Navy brats. Our dad was a pilot, and he was always gone. He loved to fly. He was part of a squadron, and he was always off on different missions. And due to the fact that he would travel with the squadron and be based, in most instances, where the air carrier was, we moved around a lot. Every 2 to 3 years, we were packing up and moving to another naval air station. And so as a result of that, we as children growing up in this environment learned very quickly how to adapt, how to get into a new school, and how to make friends. And I think I wanted to mention this because I feel that this was a very, very important part of Pete's growing up. I think that in these early days, this is truly where Pete began to develop this amazing personality that we've all come to know and love. This is where it really began to take shape. Pete learned and understood friendship. And I think that is because he took the time to really understand people. To be a Pete Magee friend was a very special situation. And it worked both ways. For Pete, it was very fulfilling. And for the person on the receiving end, it was a very meaningful and a very special relationship. Pete was intuitive, he was sensitive, he was compassionate, he was generous without limits, he was gregarious, and he was very intelligent. And I could go on, but to me those are very important. Those were traits that I think of when I think of my brother Pete. And I think this is why he was loved so much for so many years by so many people, spanning all walks of life, spanning all areas, not just here in Alamosa, but on the East Coast, on the West Coast, in England, across the world. Pete also grew up in a family of women. As I said earlier, my dad was a pilot, and he was gone always. There was a presence, but not a meaningful presence in our family of our father. Instead, there was a more stronger presence of women, the 4 of us and our mother. And I like to say, while Pete was a great brother, he was also a wonderful sister. And he really, he learned to enjoy women, as I think many of you have come to know. Pete was also my mother's favorite. Baby boy is what we always called Pete, and that came from my mother. She doted on him, and I'm not going to speak too much because Nancy's going to talk a little bit about our mother, who at 102 was not able to be with us here today. But there is a lot of our mother reflected in Pete. So those of you and all of you in this room that know Pete so well, you kind of can get, from knowing him, kind of get a feeling of who and what our mother was all about. But mother, boy, she loved him. And he always got the first choice of anything, the best piece of anything, the biggest slice of anything. And whatever was left over was set aside, and that was for Pete. And I often think, like, for a dessert, we'd have an apple pie. Mother would cut the first piece, and it was always too big, and that would go to Pete. And when it was all done, there was always at least one piece left over, and that would be put aside for Pete to have in the morning for his breakfast. No one was to touch that. And then there was the infamous tic-tac-toe cake that I think was tried to be sort of brought back to life here, one of Pete's recent birthdays on February 28th. My mother made, it was it started out really as a pretty simple cake. I think it was a Duncan Hines yellow cake mix with chocolate buttercream frosting, but she put a little tic-tac-toe grid on the top with X's and zeros. Well, Pete just loved this, and this became an annual event for him that he looked forward to for every birthday that he was able to be on hand where Mother could make the cake, his tic-tac-toe cake. I think we all will remember that. Pete's gone physically, but I truly believe his spirit will be with us forever. I feel his presence in this room. I almost feel like he's standing right here kind of poking me saying, enough, enough. Or maybe he's wandering back there in the back of the room, as I understood he did on so many occasions when there would be an event here. But his presence he'll certainly be with me forever. And yeah, I'll miss him, but he's with me, so he's never gone. In closing, I have a passage that I'd like to read. It's not too long, but please bear with me, because I really feel this is something that if Pete were standing here today and wanted to send a message to all of you, I really feel this is what he would say. These would be his words. To those I love and those who loved me, when I am gone, release me. Let me go. I have so many things to see and do. You mustn't tie yourself to me with tears. Be happy that we had so many years. I gave you my love. You can only guess how much you gave me in happiness. I thank you for the love you each have shown. But now it is time I traveled on alone. So grieve a while for me if grieve you must. Then let your grief be confronted by trust. It is only for a while that we must part, so bless the memories of the heart. I won't be far away, for life goes on. So if you need me, call and I will come. Though you can't see me or touch me, I'll be near. And if you listen with your heart, you'll hear all of my love around you, soft and clear. And then, when you must come this way alone, I'll greet you with a smile and a welcome home. And I think that's my brother Pete. Thank you very much. May he rest in peace.
Glad to see everybody. This is Pete's friends. This is his home, his community. He chose this. 1990, when Pete showed up here, he was going to go to work at Adams State and got a job, came over, showed up in May. He didn't start teaching until September, and when he showed up in May, he thought he had a job. Had a wife, a son on the way, needed a job. So the geology department called me and said, hey, we got this problem. We've got a professor that's coming in. He needing a summer job. We were working on a project over by San Luis, and he goes, do you need anybody? Yeah, we could put him on. That was his interview. Pete never asked me for a job. Showed up, we put him to work. So it was pretty good. Back in those days, we didn't have GPS, so we were using distance meters and straight line of sight stuff. And we needed to get a shot on a site that was a half-mile away. So I sent the new guy with the prisms over there to give us a shot. The point is flagged up. We had pink flagging hanging in trees and stuff, and I told him where it was, and I'm watching him going across, and he's getting pretty close. It's got pink flagging hanging on trees. And he's just kind of wandering around. And we're talking on the radio, and it's a little bit more to the west, and he finally gets to the place, and I'm going, God, what did I do? Why did I hire this guy? He's a little slow. Turns out he's colorblind, and he can't see pink flagging. So it was a fun summer. Brother Scott was working with us. We had a lot of fun. Carol and I became fast friends with Pete and Jan. Carol was there when Jack was born, and we had a good time. Pete was pretty easy to be friends with. He knew how to be a friend better than any person I ever knew. That's why all of us sit here and go, he was a dear friend to me. He was a dear friend. We all feel that way. It was just a knack he had. And like you say, it came from a childhood where he learned to make friends, because he probably wasn't worth a shit at fighting. Things that we didn't know, that I didn't know, and I hung out with him some. The captain of the football team, or co-captain of the football team in high school. He never really told me about his athletic ability. I don't know, he thought I'd give him static for it or what, but he was really smart. He was never boastful about being smart. So he was a lot smarter than me and a lot of other people. In fact, almost everybody except maybe Deacon and Jay or something. He was a lot smarter than most of them. And yet that wasn't what he was. He never had to tell you that he was really smart. He used his smart to do what he did really well. And it was pleasurable. He could do anything. He's teaching at Adams State. He's a geology professor. And GIS was just becoming part of the lexicon at that time, Geographic Information Systems. Well, Pete's doctorate was in geography. It fit well with him. His master's was in geology. And his bachelor's was in French. What is that about? But so he self-taught himself GIS when he was at Adams State so that he could teach it at the college. He didn't go to school for that per se, and it was early in the versions of the software. Pete taught himself, and then he taught students. And as things migrated forward, his marriage with Jan didn't work out. Family went back to England. Pete tried to go back to England, whatever. He wound up back here. And he went in kind of a multi-step deal, but he wound up becoming a GIS expert. And he created assessor's maps and helped this community in ways most of us will never understand. Almost any parcel that you look in the San Luis Valley that you can access on a computer and get data from that tells you who the owner is or things about that property, Pete Magee had a hand in it. And he was respected throughout the state for that. I think he was executive director of San Luis Valley GIS, GPS Authority. Probably went through several iterations of just exactly what that looked like. But he was the person who made the data come to life. He was the person who was responsible for the mapping. And that has grown into, you run around with your phone, you have Onyx Hunt on your map and you find ownerships. Pete had a hand in all of that. If ambulance goes to your house and you want to know how they found your house, it's because the addressing that was entered in that is tied to the GPS coordinates that was put in there by Pete Magee. So there's none of us that aren't touched by him every day, whether we understand it or not. We were really lucky that he chose this community to make it his home. He selected us. He could have gone anywhere. He liked to travel. He was easily comfortable anywhere that he went. But he chose us. And we really, really were lucky for that. There are things about Pete that I never understood. He has a doctorate, yet he types with 2 fingers. His whole life. I offered to teach him keyboarding. He said, Pete, I'll take 30 minutes and I can teach you. Nope. He was fast and he was good. Never understood that. But in our family, he was always welcoming events by the women, by the men, like another brother to us. He spent some holidays at our house, Christmas, Thanksgiving, always welcome, always enjoyable. He had a knack of, in a gathering, telling jokes that he shouldn't tell. Any of you guys ever hear the broccoli joke? Man, I don't cringe easily, but sometimes Pete would make me cringe on Pete. You can't do that. He was always true to himself. He always was Pete. You either liked him, if you didn't like his jokes, okay, But if it was funny to Pete, it was just funny. And he wasn't going to give it up, no matter what the rest of us thought. He lived really modestly. And in part, I think that was because he came from a family of service. His father served in the military. Pete always felt like he was providing a service to all the rest of us. It was obvious in everything he did. He wasn't out to make money, I can assure you of that. That wasn't his driving force. He wanted to do something, and something good, and he went about it, and he lived modestly so that he could not charge us very much as a community for what he did. It really, really showed up that his dedication to us. He was on the planning commission for, 16 years or something like that. It wasn't for the money, for showing up at a meeting. He truly was prepared for the meetings. He truly had empathy for the people sitting in front of the planning commission that were trying to accomplish something, and it wasn't always allowed. So sometimes they would get turned down, or Pete always had empathy for them. He always had well-reasoned responses for them. This is why you can or can't do that. He was consistent. And the fact that he cared always showed through. Even if he told you no, not too many people went away from the meeting not understanding why it was no, or hating him because he was part of that process that they didn't get an approval. Some of you know, after work, he sometimes went and had a beer. I don't know if the spare kegs recovered yet or not. Have you found anybody to yeah. It was delightful because he would go have a beer with close friends, tell stories, laugh. Yeah, he had a bad time there when he got like caught driving after being to some place to drink. And so he rode a bicycle quite a bit. And there is a picture that was shown up here earlier where his glasses are broken and his face is kind of scuffed. And I think Deacon probably knows about when that occurred. I think that was at your wedding. And he wrecked his bike the night before. He was just Pete. He was never anything else. He never needed to impress you. He wanted to laugh with you, and he would say things to make you laugh. Like I say, some of them shouldn't have been said, but for the most part, they were pretty funny. I don't quite understand how the people that loved him, close, dear, the women that loved him, still love him. How do you break up with somebody you're in love with and still like the guy? That's because I guess it was all the sisters growing up. It is a testament to who he was. He was a good guy. My little brother hung out with Pete quite a bit, and they fished. I'm sure they told lies and stuff. But Pete was raised and graduated from high school in 1970 in that hippie era, pot smoking, all that, right? You know, I don't know exactly what that was like, but so we related pretty well to that. And back in that time frame, it wasn't unusual for people to sit around in a group, some guys get together, listen to some music, maybe pass a joint around, whatever, and just listen to music, not watching TV, not watching a game, just listening to music, enjoying each other's company. Scott told me not too long back, he said, I only have one person that ever comes to my house to just listen to music. That was Pete. He did a lot of things like that. He didn't recreate a lot when he was first 20 years that I knew him. My family hunts and fishes and travels and does stuff, and I know Pete loved to travel. But he didn't play golf. He wasn't really into football. He decided he needed to learn something to do to recreate, so he learned to fish. I don't know how many people can take up a sport or an activity later in life and just learn to love it. I don't know how good he was at fishing, but he was really good to be with fishing. Did he catch many fish to the ice, Jay? But he was always so welcome on any trip, anywhere, doing anything. And I just know there's a lot of you that feel the same way. It doesn't make any difference where you were at, what you were doing. You walk into a room, you get in a car, you go somewhere with Pete Magee was a pleasure to have there. He was always enjoyable. Now at our office, we got to listen to him when he wasn't enjoying the computer. He knew bad words, and we'd be in some other part of the office and have a client in there, and there would be some really smoking stuff come out of the other room as he was angry at software or something. But he always recovered from that. He would get mad, he would scream, holler, cuss, and then he would be okay. Didn't upset the rest of his day, didn't take it out on anybody else. One of the things I'm sad for him is that he always fought with the deer in his backyard. Cussed the deer, talked to the Russells, there's some way, can we come harvest a bunch of these, whatever, you know. But right at the end of his life, he hired to have a fence built. So he had a backyard to keep the deer out. Fence got finished last week. Bummer. But it's pretty, and it was the right idea for him. I know that Pete did not look forward to getting old and unhealthy. He had friends that were sick that he took to the doctor. He was the best friend to have for that because he would be there for you. He would be there for you. He himself was not looking forward to the golden years. He wasn't afraid of dying in the least. He wanted to be aware that he was dying with his eyes open and experience it. One more thing to experience, the last one he knew for sure he got to do. We talked about that. That was Pete. Politics were a part of his life. He had an opinion, willing to share it. Pretty fun. At our office, we all look forward to going in the morning, having a cup of coffee with Pete, discuss things, see how the world was doing. What Pete didn't do was bring gossip about anybody to those morning coffees. Pete just didn't really talk bad about people. And he would talk good. He wouldn't necessarily share things about himself if it wasn't necessary for the occasion. I mean, I found out after he died that he spent time with a rainbow family. This is the old hippie rainbow family that gathered down on San Antonio Mountain. He never told me that. We'd had some fun conversations about that. But he has a friend, Beth Koenig, that moved to Spain at the end of December. And Pete helped her move. He was going to go walk the Camino in Spain. He looked forward to it. His sisters had walked it. And he didn't make it. But Beth sent a letter to all of us that I'll read for you. Greetings, friends and loved ones of Pete. I sincerely wish I could be sitting in person amongst you all while we say, see you later, to one of the best men I have ever known. When I was first asked to write some words for Pete's memorial service, I balked. What could I say that would come close to saying what I wanted? I am not normally a social person, and I find it difficult to verbalize feelings and emotions. But after a couple of days, my heart just told me I needed to share amongst so many who knew and loved him. My heart has been broken and painfully tender since learning of his passing, and perhaps Pete has prompted me to begin the process of moving forward. I met Pete about 15 years ago. From the very start, he and I just clicked. All we needed was a quick text, and Pete and I would meet up at the brewery, the Speakeasy, or other fine dining establishment in Alamosa, where we shared a love of Irish whiskey, communal plates of food, and talking together on various topics. Some of our favorites were the state of the world, philosophy, fishing, common acquaintances, otherwise known as gossip, travel, and of course, politics. There was very little that Pete and I did not hash out together to the umpteenth degree. Another shared love of ours was cooking. Pete and I supported each other in our mutual aloneness. When we found ourselves without other plans, or when we knew there were other friends without plans for holidays, Pete's home was opened and he coordinated great culinary get-togethers. Friendship and community was central to Pete's psyche, and one of his greatest joys was shared laughter amongst friends. It was during these times that Pete would get that lopsided grin, that twinkle in his eye, and that little bounce in his step. You all know exactly what I'm talking about. As for me, I truly enjoyed him pulling me out of my hermitage, cooking side by side, and sharing recipes. I won't eat another toast with brie and apricot jam without thinking of Pete in his kitchen. Pete loved to travel, and so do I. We only did so together a couple of times, but oh, how we so loved to share adventures with each other after one of us would have one. I picked apart his travels to Georgia, Canada, the Philippines, and even his shorter trips that were more local. He would do the same every time I traveled. I loved to hear about his adventures while living in England, and he so enjoyed telling his tales. In January, I made my final move to Spain. Pete proved to be that constant and most reliable friend through 3 years of my international seesaw, and he did not falter at the end. Instead, he stepped up and offered constant support. He took care of my mail and forwarded it to me, assisted with any business matters I couldn't handle from Spain. Of course, he also offered me his very best advice, something anyone who knew Pete would definitely recognize. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. It was Pete who rose before the sun on New Year's Day to drive me to the airport for my final departure from the United States. It was Pete who hugged me for the last time just before I went through the gates to board my plane, and it was Pete who texted me regularly during my journey until he knew I was safely home in Spain. We stayed in constant contact through these few months. Pete had intended to come to Spain for a visit in August and September. We were having a wonderful time planning what we'd do and see. The one adventure we were looking forward to was walking Pete's first Camino de Santiago. He had heard so much about it from his sisters and myself and wanted to do one himself. My move to Spain was prompted largely by my love of the Camino, and I couldn't wait to share it with such a special friend. Pete would have thoroughly appreciated and embraced it as it was meant to be experienced. I have not stopped making those plans. The only thing that has changed is the route taken. I will walk Pete's Camino in memorial to him. It will start with the Camino Inglés, which begins where the English pilgrims would arrive and begin their pilgrimage, in remembrance of Pete's time spent in England. After reaching Santiago, I will continue to Fenestre, known as the end of the earth. There, I will make my final farewell and throw Pete's pilgrim shell out to sea, his pilgrim passport, which will be stamped at various places twice per day across northern Spain, and I will take home and keep next to my own always. My greatest disappointment will not being able to see this journey through Pete's eyes, but it will be the most important and treasured Camino of those I have walked to date. And now my words are to Pete himself. Oh, my dear, dear friend, I know that you know what is in my heart and how much you are missed. I know that you understand that I don't know how to live in a world without Pete. I know you laugh every time I start to text or email you because I just had a thought or a story I wanted to share or something new I wanted to add to our visit. I know you're still with me. It is so very hard for me knowing that I can't hear or see you or ask for advice. I find myself still anticipating your visit, and when September comes, there will be a huge jolt when you do not arrive. There are no other words. You know my heart. And for one thing I'll never have to regret is that we didn't ever hesitate to tell each other how much we loved and appreciated each other and how much our friendship meant to each other. Thank you for that, my friend. You are in my soul forever. I love you, Pete Magee, always. A lot of us love Pete Magee. Truly. Really, really, truly. Thanks. Darius Allen kind of knew Pete. I think he ran across him a time or two.
I sure wish I had never told him that story about the beef and broccoli. I know it's going to come back to haunt me one of these days, and I think it has. As I look out here today, I thought this morning I was out mowing some weeds, and I thought maybe I should make some notes. I sure wish I had now, but I did. And I got to work with Pete being a county commissioner. I even wore my Alamos County shirt today. Not because I had to, it's the only one I had that was clean. And I knew Pete would like that. We had several conversations through the years of my 24 years as county commissioner with Pete Magee. We had a lot of fun together, a lot of laughs. When I got the word of losing Pete that Monday morning, I got a call earlier that morning. I had a calf out down on the south of the Highway 17. It's usually Highway Patrol would always call and say, "You have cows out the loafing jug." So I was on my way down to put a calf in, and I'd always, when I get down that way, I would turn off and go to Pete's office, stop in for a visit whenever I could, because it was always an entertaining time for me. And we loved to talk about politics. So afterwards, if anybody can kind of side up on which side you are politically, I can give you Pete's real version. It will really enlighten you. And it would be exciting too. And I stopped in there to swung around to see him. I'd pull into Danny's parking lot, and Pete's pickup wasn't there that morning. And I thought, what in the heck? It's already, like 8 o'clock, and he's usually there by 7:30 or so. He's an early riser, and he'd get there early. So I thought, well, I must be at a meeting or something this morning. So I headed on back down the road, and about that time, Danny Russell called me. And he said, "Darius," he says, I got some news for you. I said, "What's that?" He said, "Our buddy Pete, he didn't want to come into work today. He didn't make it through the weekend." I said, "What are you talking about?" So Danny told me what had happened, and we had lost Pete. And immediately when something like that happens, you have 1,000 memories go through your mind. And Judy, you did such a fine job, and Danny did such a fine job, and they put me up here to make them look a lot better. And I just had so many thoughts go through my mind, and all the dinners at lunches and meetings Pete and I had together. Pete was our emergency manager for Alamosa County for a number of years. And he worked off of a grant partially, and so we needed a complete emergency plan, or we were gonna lose our grant. I said, "Pete, we really got to get this. I'll get on it." So he got on it right away 6 months later. And he brought it to me, and it was a fine piece of work. The thing was this thick, and I thought, well, these people are going to look at that. I said, maybe I better look through it. So I started looking through it, then all of a sudden it kept saying Elbert County. Turn it, Elbert County. He forgot to take out Elbert County when he was copying somebody else's material. So I went and bought a whiteout, and we went through it pretty good step by step, and we finally got the thing approved. And I said, "Pete, next time, make sure you edit these a little better, But I tell you one thing, and I'd always say this, Pete, as in the agriculture world, that guy was smarter than a 7-year-old border collie. And I would tell him that too, because he was a smart man, and he was good to work with. I was a commissioner when we appointed him to the Planning Commission. I thought, this would be a good one, because this really keep the rest of the crew wound up pretty tight. Because Pete, he would think a little different. He'd think out of the box. You always hear that term, thinking out of the box. Well, he would. I mean, sometimes like, where in the hell's the box? He was like way out of the box. And he would call me after a meeting and say, "This is what we did last night. This is where I was at." And he'd always have a good explanation of where he stood. It didn't matter if the rest of the Planning Commission would go an opposite way. It didn't bother Pete. I think in his mind and in his heart and his soul, he said, "I researched it, I made the right decision." And we talked about that many, many times, about making the right decision. Pete, I was just thinking of some of the meals we had, and he'd always bring up that beef and broccoli. So I want you all, every time you get to eat beef and broccoli, I want you to think about Pete. He would enjoy that a lot. Danny just hit on it just a little bit about becoming a bicyclist. Not by choice. But he got good at it until the day he wrecked. And I still remember going to see him, and he had his glasses taped up, and they were still kind of a little off to the side. I said, "What happened?" He said, "Oh, man." He said, "I got hit right in the ass." I said, "Pete, you shouldn't say stuff like that." I said, "Maybe you got hit in the rectum." He said, "Rectum? Hell, it like to killed me." But he always had a good comeback on some things like that. One of the things we laughed a lot about is we'd always have a joke for each other. So in the book of Ecclesiastes, it talks about there's always a time for everything. There's a time to die, a time to plant, a time for everything. And I think Pete really believed that. So one of my favorite jokes that we'd always joke about is better look around and see who's here. No, it's okay. Pete would always tell this, he'd love to tell this story about these two guys down in Houston, Texas, driving to work. One guy was black, one guy was white. And the conversation went something like this. You know, I love God, and I'm a Christian, and I really believe God is white. The black guy looked at him and raised his eyebrows. Pete could really tell this story good. He said, no, not a way, no way. He says, God was black. He says, no, there's no way. So they got in a heated argument going down the freeway in Houston. The driver drifted onto the incoming traffic, crashed the pickup, killed them both. They're standing before the pearly gates, and the fog was rising above. The gates were opening. Here come God walking out. He said, ¿Cómo está, mi amigo? Pete loved that. We had fun talking about that. We talked a little bit about friends and what friends mean. And as I was cutting weeds this morning, I thought, well, what is a friend? So I went in and I Googled it up, or as Pete used to say, gargle that up. See what you think about that. So I Googled it up, and it's just, it talked about, a friend is sincere, and a friend is this, and a friend, and I thought, oh, that's good, but I think down deep, a friend is someone that you may not see weeks at a time, months at a time, years at a time, but when you see them and you sit down with them, you can just continue that conversation just like you had seen them the day before. And that's the way it was with Pete, with so many people that he knew. He may not see them every day. He may not see them monthly, yearly, but when he would sit down with them, it's like he was just there hours before. He had that knack about him that people just fell in love with him and loved to be around him. And we were fortunate in this community, everything he did for us in this community. And Danny kind of hit on a little bit. A lot of us will never know what all he did in the workload he took on and for the amount of pay he was receiving. And I talked to the assessor, Sandra Hostetter, about she was involved with the GIS with Alamosa County and some of the other counties. And Pete was well known around the state of Colorado and in the county commissioner world for his work that he did for Alamosa County and other counties here in the valley. But the work that he did was just, you just couldn't step into it and do it. And I think when Pete was gone, when we got to looking into everything he did, there was no way we could hire anybody to do that, just to step in and do everything he did. Because he was the kind of guy that he would start something and you'd add to it and you keep adding to it and you keep adding to it and just keep doing it. And he had a heart for this community and for this valley. That's the Pete Magee I know. I appreciate you all. Let me just take a few minutes to share just some thoughts with Pete. And he was a dear friend, and more than that, he was a buddy. I could stop in, and he would stop his work immediately, and we'd wheel his chair around, and we'd pull up to each other, and we'd have a nice session of just visiting. But every time I walk in, it was always, Commissioner, how are you? I'd say, Dr. Alfred, how are you? And we just had that good relationship, and he will be missed in this community, in this town, and I will sincerely miss him as a lot of other of us. But remember one thing, if you would, anytime you have broccoli, think of Pete.
The family would like to take this time to give any of you sitting in the audience that like to share remembrance an opportunity to do that. So there's microphones on each side with cords that we could take back to you. If anybody wants to share something with us, raise your hand and we'll make sure we get a microphone to you.
There we go. I'm Al Greer, longtime friend of Pete's as well. My first encounter with Pete was at the pub, sitting down, gonna have a drink, and here's this guy sitting next to me, good-looking dude. You know, we're just kind of sitting there, not really acknowledging each other yet, and he orders from the bar, and up comes the short glass of Jameson. And I looked over at him, I said, "Are you from around here?" He goes, "No, I live here." I said, "Really?" And I just said, "How can you drink that shit?" And so I ordered up I'm a tequila man. So I ordered my tequila, we sat down there, we had our drinks. I just looked at him, I said, "Pete," after we had introduced each other, I said, "I don't know if I can trust a man that drinks that stuff. Around here, tequila is the drink of choice." So we got in a animated conversation about the virtues of our preferred alcohols. And so as the night went on, again, because I showed up there early afternoon. Before I knew it, it was nighttime. And of course, we were both 3 or 4 sheets to the wind. But that encounter with Pete set the stage for the rest of my encounters with the man. We would always meet with Beth, sit at the bar, talk about the day's events, just sit there and raise hell and make commentary about just about everything. The thing that I will miss about that man is Pete and I both had this mutual love of women. And so our love's lost, our love's current, our love's ongoing we were always comparing notes to see how we mesh in our love affairs. So I will miss that man because we had the things in common that we had were just both a wry sense of humor. The guy was sharp as a tack, and again, if I had my flask of tequila here, it would be being tipped at this point. So, Pete, I'll miss you, and folks, I know you will too.
My name's Brenda Femley. I know a lot of you. I knew a lot of you through Pete. It's been interesting to hear some perspectives from folks. I'm happy to meet Jan, whatever. Pete was a huge part of our lives and my family. And I think the one thing we're not hearing today is Pete was not a handyman. And something always broke every time he went out to Virginia to celebrate birthdays, his mom and his birthday, because they were close together. The garage door fell on my car once. The furnace went out, yeah, so. But we haven't been together for a long time. We met on New Year's Day, 2001, and we split up on New Year's Eve on 2010. So a good 10 years together. That was kind of ironic, but he's still been by my side. I've had my own challenges. He has been there for me, as he has with most women. Pete loved a damsel in distress. You needed a limb picked up, the dog wasn't feeling good, he was there. He was there for you. And no questions asked. He did it. While we were together, Jackie and Mike planned their vacation out here. They were very close to him, especially Mike. Had a lot of good times. I think the perspective with my dad, honestly, until I talked to Judy, sometimes you don't know the effect you have on somebody until they're gone. And I didn't know how much he had talked about our family with them. I just didn't know. So I appreciate that. I appreciate his sisters finally, Jan, Miles. Wish Jack could be here. Be great. He always kept me abreast of what the kids were doing. And I know he loved him dearly. I know. You were his kids, you know. So that's all I have, but I appreciate everyone being here. It's been a journey. He probably did it the way he wanted to do it, so I think we all realize that. But he's always in my heart. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Brenda.
You know, that's so funny, Brenda and Al, talking about Pete's love of women. Because when you would go out of town and he would watch your dog, he would take it down to the pub because it was a chick magnet. Having a little dog with him. You know, I don't think anything ever happened, but that's what Pete would say. Yeah, yes. Yeah. Mr. Jones got around when Mr. Jones was with Pete, but you know, I didn't know Pete as well as many, but for some reason, however many years ago, I can tell you exactly where we sat at the brewery, and I talked to Pete about Society Hall. I couldn't tell you what I said, but I had keys to the building, and I brought Pete over, and Pete immediately saw the vision. And without him, there would be no Society Hall. So it's kind of really great that we honor him here. And when Dan Boy called me, you know, and I think many of you gasped for air because you thought, Pete? What, Pete's gone? What do you mean? He can't be gone. You know, I have a couple friends, you drive down the road and every once in a while your breath is just taken away because you think of that. And I would like to encourage everyone in Pete's honor, because my family's been going through some difficulties with a sister, really bad. And I think I didn't call her enough. I didn't go see her. She lived in goddamn Santa Fe. And so now we're struggling, and we hope she makes it. Family, you think the times you didn't see Pete, Pete didn't see you. I think of people in the nursing home that we all need to call and go see, because there are no guarantees for any of us. And so take this week, spend that hour and go to breakfast with someone you haven't seen, or call someone, or take just a minute out of your schedule and do something like that, because we don't know. And I still kind of go, damn it, Pete. And the one thing, this is Pete's board. Who the hell knows what Pete wrote that on there for? And I'd think of asking him, and then I'd forget, and I'd think of asking him. But if anyone knows, and Scooter, this is the board you're going to do some routering on, Pete's board. He had a purpose, he had a reason. I forgot to ask him. But thank you all for coming. I'm so thrilled Society Hall could help in remembering Pete, and without Pete, we wouldn't have this beautiful building. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Candy Dawson. I didn't get to spend all this wonderful time with Pete, although I've known him for a really long time. But in sitting there and hearing about all the fun with his sisters and knowing Pete as we all do and did, I have to think of a time when we were playing in Crestone, and my husband and I don't remember which band, but I believe that particular time we went as Ike and Tina Turner. And so you have to know, Roger's pretty pale. He went totally as Ike. We had a blast. We were showstoppers, but nothing compared to Ms. Pete Magee. She came decked out like no woman you've ever seen, and all I saw was, stop that, stop that. Because all night the gentlemen were like tickling her fanny and doing whatever. So I just had to share a really fun story. I think about that and it just cracks me up. And she was really at home in her Pete self.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate this, Jared.
I don't need to buy the microphone, but being a volunteers, last 6 years of my professional career were spent 10 feet from Pete Magee. So I got the most recent taste of Pete. And we talked about this a lot, but what I'm going to tell you right now is, hey Pete, it's time to come out. Because we talked about me doing something like this when he passed. And he says, that'd be a great joke, wouldn't it? And I said, yeah, it is. That's pure Pete Magee.
All right, well, here's a song that I was asked to learn and play. It's written by a dear friend named Don Conoscenti, who has been here at Society Hall. And when Judy was speaking, it made me think of this song that, yeah, I can feel Pete. I mean, big time. But anyway, it's a beautiful song. It's called The Other Side. I'm over on the other side, where life and death softly divide. I left my skin and bones behind. Now I'm over on the other side. Can you feel me there with you? My breath is gone, but I'm not through. I loved you then, and I still do. From over on the other side, I can fly, really fly. Below the earth, all through the sky. Tell them all I did not die. I'm just over on the other side. Well, it's good here on the other side. The sweetest songs, the bluest skies. Thank you for the tears you cried, but it's good here on the other side. I can fly, really fly, below the earth, all through the sky. Go tell them all I did not die. I'm just over on the other side. The world is smaller than a needle's eye, where life and death softly divide. When you leave your skin and bones behind, I'll be waiting on the other side. I can fly, really fly, below the earth, all through the sky. Go tell them all I did not die. I'm just over on the other side. The other side, on the other side.
This is Pete's sister, Patty. Delighted to have her here. I have a few words with you.
Well, this has been some kind of a celebration. And as has been mentioned several times already, we are very, very grateful to all of you for your support and caring during this difficult time for us, as well as for your presence today, and especially for your friendship and love of Pete. He would be so pleased to see all of you, but he'd probably be wondering what all the fuss is about. So I'm going to add a little more levity to the conversations today and hopefully give you some stories to laugh about rather than cry about. And we can all go on and carry on from here, continuing to celebrate Pete and his life. I'm going to start by telling you what Pete was like before he got to Alamosa. First, and I find this really kind of interesting, by now most of you know that Pete was not really his real name. You might even have missed his obituary because you didn't recognize the name. Alfred Wesley Magee III? Who was that? His grandfather was known as Al, and his father was known as Wes. So I guess when he was born, our parents wanted to continue the tradition of the name, but couldn't figure out what they were going to call him. I don't think anyone knows how it was settled on Pete, but it certainly fits, doesn't it? Can you imagine if we were here celebrating Al Magee or Fred Magee? Just wouldn't seem the same, would it? But having said that, for many of us in the family, I'll share another secret with you. He's not really Pete.
he's Petey. And for the nieces and nephews, he's Uncle Petey. And to this day, that's what he's called. Here's an even better bit of information, but it's already been shared. Did you know that his undergraduate degree was in French? Did anyone ever hear him speak Français? Did he even talk about France? How in the world did that happen? Well, I have a theory. I've often thought, but I've never cleared this with Pete, so it may just be my own version of life. I've often thought that the French department at Randolph-Macon, the college where he went in Virginia, was failing. And the head of the department was desperate to keep it going. So somehow or another, they must have talked to Pete and talked him and a couple of his friends for a lot of promises to continue to take French and to keep the department alive. But I've also heard that it was really that he wanted to go skiing in Chamonix, and in order to do that, he needed to have French. So no matter what, even back then, he was always willing to help. Merci beaucoup, Pete. The real mystery, however, is how did he get from a French degree at Randolph-Macon to a geology, physical geography degree from Oxford? Totally different skill set, not even close. But I'm guessing that he found his real love and he just worked hard, and the rest is history. And there is one more story. There are lots of stories, but this is one more. When he was in college, apparently he liked to push the envelope a bit. And he found himself in a bit of a dilemma at one point for possession of substances that today are perfectly legal, but back there presented some problems. In any event, my husband, David, in the middle of the night, got a frantic phone call from our mother telling him what had happened and saying, you've got to go, you've got to bail him out of jail, he's in jail, you've got to do it. So David said, well, I can't do anything tonight, but tomorrow morning I'll go down first thing. And he did, and he got everything squared away. So he went to he was at the jailhouse meeting with the sheriff, and he said, okay, I'm here to pick up my brother-in-law, Pete, and his other friend in crime. And, we've paid our bail, we're ready to go. But the sheriff said, well, no, they won't be coming out for a bit. And my husband sat there somewhat puzzled and said, well, what's the problem? What's going on? Why can't he come out? And the sheriff continued on, and he said, well, they were put on kitchen duty last night. And they really don't want to leave until they get their breakfast this morning, especially the biscuits that they helped make. So David had to sit there waiting while they were whiling away their time. Apparently, being in jail was not a tough thing. We laugh at these stories, and we laugh at others because it's better than tears. And Pete would not want tears. But we also stand in awe, not only of what Pete accomplished, but what we have learned about his unfailing willingness to help others and to do so with a sense of humility that I'm not sure he was even aware of. He was never one to boast about his accomplishments. Even we, his family, never realized how much he had accomplished or how much he had contributed to the community. I recently read a graduation address given by a retiring president of a fairly prestigious university. In that address, he was imploring the students, and I quote, "Whatever you do with your education, please be known at least as much for your humility, kindness, and concern for others as for your professional accomplishments." Without realizing it, I believe that is exactly what Pete did. Our family is devastated by his loss. He was our only brother in a sea of sisters. His absence is heartbreaking, and the suddenness of his passing makes it so much more difficult. Every day since we've learned of his passing, I wish I had just one more day with him to tell him, as has been mentioned here many times, how much he meant to us, to say those things that you hope you will always get to say. And yet that doesn't always happen. But I know he would want us to laugh as we remember his life and to celebrate the occasion just as we have planned, with good music, with good friends and family, and with good food and drink. But before we begin our celebration, please take a moment with me, just a moment of quiet, as we remember and say a few prayers. We remember and pray for all of those who give of themselves so that others may be helped, and especially of those who need our help, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, or whether it's financial. We remember and pray for all of Pete's friends and colleagues in thanksgiving for their friendship and in the hope that they will find joy and laughter in their memories of him now and for years to come. And we remember and pray for all of Pete's family, his sons, his mother, his sisters, all of us, and his many nieces and nephews, those here with us today and those who were unable to be with us, that they may be comforted in their grief and loss, and that they will look forward to the day when they will all be together again. But most especially, we pray for Pete by turning to a very familiar Irish prayer. Dear Pete, may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, and the rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Thank you again for being here. It means so much to all of us, and especially it means so much, I'm sure, to Pete, who is up there looking down on us and will be with us as we continue this celebration. So please join us as we go forward. Thank you again.
Well, here's a song that kind of speaks of the land and you know, the wonder of it all, and I think Pete felt that very much. And of course, we appreciate his service to those who deal with the land and those of us who live on it, and you know, all the many ways that he contributed. That like Dan says, we'll never know. We're talking with some friends this morning and talking about this gathering that we were going to, and they asked, well, so what did Pete do for a job? And says, well, something to do with GIS and maps and you know, all this stuff. But it was great to hear, and we said we need to ask Dan to explain it. But anyway, it's great to hear more, and I would love to hear more yet about all that he did there. But I tell you what, like Ruthie said, Pete's heart and his soul and his energy were very much devoted to Society Hall, and we're so honored to be able to host this here. Anyway, this is a little song that it's called The Hands of Time. Mountains and mesas, valleys and peaks, southwestern sunset, twilight mystique. I am no stranger, I am one with this land. The high-flying eagle knows me by heart. Of all that I witness, I am a part. I am no stranger, I am one with this land. There's a lesson, if you listen, you will learn. It's a blessing we are given to discern. Well, there's no words to define the grand design. When you shake the hands of time, the deep roots and branches, the earth and the sky, bind them together. Now I know why they seek to show me that we are one with this land. The seeds I have planted, now grown so tall, may wisdom find them, may they hear the call of the high-flying eagle. We are one with this land. Well, here I stand, surrounded by this mystery, this winding road that brought me here has let me know, no matter where I go, I'm not alone. There's a lesson, if you listen, you will learn. It's a blessing we are given to discern. There's no words to define the grand design. When you shake the hands of time, when you shake the hands of time, the mountains and mesas, valleys and peaks, southwestern sunset, twilight mystique, the deep roots and branches, the earth and the sky, combine them together. Now I know why I'm no stranger, I'm one with this land. Well, I am no stranger, I'm one with this land. Pete was better at not being a stranger than anybody I've ever seen, you know.
Thanks, Brother Don. Pete's family would like you to join him for something to eat, something to drink, share conversations with him. They really do appreciate the community that Pete chose. So, as we exit, the family will go first. And for those of you that want water, there's water in the coolers in the back here. There'll be one of Pete's favorite beverages was Colorado Commons from the spare keg, and I believe there's some of that outside. Pete was a bit of a wine master. Well, I don't know how good we were, but we made a lot of wine. And there are a few bottles out of Pete's own stash that'll be opened up for any of you who want a red wine to try. So appreciate everybody coming here.
Pete always told us that the wine that he brought, that he always had some LSD.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's no doubt that he would have told you that. So thanks, everybody. If the family would like to. Pete Magee, thank you. I love you, brother.
Thank you, brother. Well, this is sort of a recessional for you. You can, you know, don't feel like you gotta sit still. Yeah, there's going to be music and food outside. You know, and Pete would want me to tell you that there's a show here tonight at Society Hall. An excellent Nashville songwriter named Buddy Mondlock. So, you know, if you need a little entertainment, come on out. Mama, take this badge off of me. I can't use it anymore. It's getting dark, too dark to see. I feel I'm knocking on heaven's door. Knock, knock, 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 knocking on heaven's door. Mama put my guns in the ground, 'cause I can't shoot them anymore. That long black cloud is coming down. I feel I'm knocking on heaven's door. Knock, knock, 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 knocking on heaven's door.